Well, welcome to the March 11th Provincetown 365 meeting. I have a sign-in sheet. I do see some new faces. I don't know if you want to go around the room and do quick introductions. I feel like every time they get quicker, so it's not a bad thing. I'm Gloria McPherson, the town planner of Provincetown.
For a little while.
For life.
Jen moderator.
Out of order.
That was kind of funny though.
Well, I mean, I blame you for that.
It is your fault.
My name is Rob Anderson.
Hi, Ross.
How's it going?
My name is Jennifer Cabral. Hi, to new people.
Ed Dusik. Paul Kelly.
Jan Fox.
Elaine Anderson.
Tom Comiskey. Rick Albert.
Maureen Wilson.
Meg Stewart.
Grace Spider O'Malley.
Nancy Jacobson.
Nadine Lacoste.
And Gina Lithcott.
Richard Arsenal. Peter Pettis.
Rick Murray.
Brandon Pleasant Planning.
Jim Woods.
Eileen Mitnick.
Ally Baldwin.
So, I think this will be a pretty quick meeting compared to our other ones. Although, I have to say, I've been to all the individual work groups, and they all covered a lot of ground, so there might be a lot to report. Agenda item number 2, update on the 509A1 Nonprofit Community Foundation. All 3 people who have been involved in that are not present at the meeting, so we're going to have to wait for an update on that. And honestly, I can't give you an update myself because I don't know where we are with that. I'm hoping that they've already formed it, but we'll see next month.
And which committee was that?
It's not a committee, it's just a group of people, just 3 who wanted to get together and look at forming a community nonprofit
Okay.
to help potentially raise money and get some of these projects done. Update from individual work groups. I don't know that each work group actually picked a representative other than to the community outreach work group, so maybe that's the person who might best talk about what the group did, or if someone else wants to jump in, that would be fine. First one on the list is Shankpainer Road.
Well, I'm the representative to outreach. I didn't come prepared. I didn't bring my minutes. They're on the web. But let's see. We talked about the what can we do in terms of Shankpainer Road, long term, short term, and there was a lot of discussion about looking at where if we're going to go ahead and try to do some kind of a bike path, bike lane. Which side is better, or should we do both sides?
There was a lot of discussion about the actual layout. I think in the DART report they had conceptual layouts which showed that within the 60-foot wide road right-of-way that there really is enough room for a bike lane on each side, a dedicated bike lane, and sidewalks. But one of the discussion topics was, does it make sense to potentially come up with other conceptual drawings, obviously with the input of the DPW, and potentially do a cycle track, which is becoming more and more popular in urban areas, which would put 2 lanes of bike travel together and have it only on one side of the road. You don't really save a lot of space because you need a buffer between a cycle track and the travel lanes, but in some ways it could facilitate ease of movement, and when you think about the placement of the telephone poles, it might make sense to have a cycle track on the other side. But it's just some of the things that were discussed, and we're going to actually start coming up with sketches of different conceptual road layouts for our next subgroup meeting. Elaine?
Gloria, a couple of years ago, the Cape Cod Commission worked with the Board of Selectmen in studying Shankpainer Road. And there is a report, and there are some sketches of how they envision the development in that area, or how it could be designed.
Do you remember where they would be or where we'd find them?
I think DART actually had them
DART had them.
and incorporated them in their report.
Oh,
Yeah, they
okay.
did, and I think, did you like those? Because I think that's one of the reports that I put on the website, which it might be on the Provincetown 365 website, is it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so you can look at it there, and actually it was a pretty comprehensive study.
It was pretty good.
They did a variety of different road layout concepts depending on the width of the right-of-way, because most of Shankpainer Road is a 60-foot layout. But there are some parts that are down to 40 feet, so obviously you can do less than 40 feet than you can in 60 feet. But it's a good starting point. I know that the DART team, when they were here, had that as background information, so they took that into consideration. And yeah, I think we're gonna look at some other options beyond that, because I know that that didn't include a cycle track.
No, it didn't, and it also brought to the forefront the problem with the curb cuts.
Wow.
I mean, it's a disaster out there.
Oh, I know it is.
Yes.
I believe I said that once. It was
Yes.
slammed for that.
So anything we do out there is going to be a challenge.
Yeah, it is. It's, well, there are challenges and there are challenges. I don't think it's a challenge to redesign a road. I mean, cities and towns do it all the time. I think the challenge is more in the education and outreach component of that, and getting people to understand that, for some reason, I think people think it's intuitively safer to have like wide open curb cuts when you can go everywhere. And I think that there's a big educational component to that. To make it clear to people that actually that's the least safe circumstance, and that curb cuts are important, and you want to like actually have access control to different lots of the street. If possible, you want to line them up with things across the street so cars aren't turning out onto the main road at offset angles. So yeah, I mean it's difficult, but it's not really. It's just.
Well, I think it's a worthwhile endeavor, no matter what.
Oh yeah, it'll greatly
It's
improve the
kind of
safety
the
of the road.
last
And
horizon,
you truly can't have a safe road for all modes of transportation until you have access control to all those lots, because it's just not safe for pedestrians. And I think that anyone who rides bikes on Champaign Road will say the same thing. It's just not a comfortable place to ride. And actually, maybe Rick can talk a little bit more about the complete streets policy that we're thinking about for the Champaign Road.
Sure. I did a lot of research into model complete streets policies, and the question of why would we want to have a complete street policy, what is this, and is it worth doing? And I think the reason it's worth doing and worth pursuing is that there's state funding that requires you to have a complete streets policy in place. And one of the things that comes up often when people start talking about Champaign and putting in sidewalks and all of that is, where's the money gonna come from? If there's state funding to do it, I think that's a great way to leverage funds that are available. And I think Provincetown's in a good position to be really competitive for that funding because of the economy here.
Sorry, could you just tell us what complete streets are? Just
Sure.
briefly?
Complete streets are a vision of public roads as places that are intended for all modes of transport, so that they're designed for people who are walking, people who are biking, people with strollers, people with disabilities. So they have
Public transit.
public transportation, so that it includes bus stops and transit facilities. It can include things like streetscape improvements like street trees, and things like traffic calming elements that would include things like roundabouts or speed humps or any of those kind of things that are in that toolbox for making streets safe for everyone. 'Cause if you
And
look
does it
at-
require a town-wide policy, or is it street-specific?
It would be, it's town-wide, because making things street-specific isn't really the way to approach it. But obviously in town here, we have exceptions that are never gonna get that treatment. I mean, we do what we can, and I put together a draft policy that addresses that, based on kind of national standards and Massachusetts standards. And it's really straightforward. It really just says, these roads are for everyone, let's design them so that when we do things like repaving, we actually think about bicycles, and we think about people in wheelchairs, and we think about crosswalks, and design speeds as well. So that a road like Champaign that's signed for 25 miles per hour isn't designed for 25 miles per hour, so people go a lot faster than we want them to. I think if you look at the speed limit signs, it says 25, and people go a lot faster than that. So it helps to put any kind of public expenditure when you're doing a road design or when you're doing a repaving project, and you end up including all of those elements. So it just makes it kind of part of the normal process of kind of improving the roads around town. And it would be, I think, really valuable for DPW to have that in their toolbox. And for town to be able to, the policy as written and what the state is requiring for the funding is that there's yet another committee to oversee that. But it means that it's cross-functional. So it would be people from DPW, people from planning, people from the community who would be involved in that to make sure that street projects get reviewed. and that they address everybody's needs to the degree that they can.
Are some of this,
Go ahead.
excuse me, are some of the zoning issues, setbacks in new construction and zoning, is that
That's not addressed.
looked at?
It's really just kind of a curb to curb kind of thing, and since we don't have curbs, it's lot line to lot line.
Yeah, it's for the road right of way.
Yeah.
It's the public part of the road layout.
Okay.
And from a policy perspective, it's not a policy that would have to go before town meeting. It's something that's typically approved by city council or board of selectmen. And it's not a design document per se. It gives you policy guidelines for how you look at roads. But obviously, as each road comes up for review or repair or repaving, you do what you can. It's basically just saying, we acknowledge that, you know, making roads safe for all modes of transportation is important to this community, and you look at each road individually, and obviously some roads are so narrow in Provincetown, you just can't do everything to them. It's just an effort to do the best that you can under the circumstances. Rick?
Just one historical perspective, when you said an educational challenge, I think the big elephant in the room about Champaign is it's more of a political challenge than I think an educational one that's should be done or shouldn't be done. And again, that always rests with the leadership, which is the Board of Selectmen. So I used to be the chairman of the planning board when Matt Costa sold the go-kart section. And what unfortunately what happened back then in 94, 95, most applicants come before the planning board for a simple A&R, and you can't disapprove certain A&R because it's just they've got the frontage, they've got the square footage, they have everything, but it's one of the challenges with our zoning planning / we never had a town planner, we never had somebody to bring up certain pluses and minuses for doing certain things, so it's always difficult for a planning board or an adjudicatory board like a zoning board to see what's going to happen down the road because the Board of Selectmen are never involved at that point for, say, curb cuts. So again, if that's something to think about in the back of your minds, that when these A&Rs come about to plan, I think Grace is here, isn't she?
Yeah.
Rick,
Who else is on planning here now?
Rick, what's an A&R?
Brandon is.
Approval not required. So if somebody somebody has a piece of land and they want to subdivide it to put a commercial building or a single-family building or two families, they go before the planning board for simple A&R. That just get approved because if you've got the frontage, you've got the square footage, you can't deny it. It gets approved, but the problem is there's never that foresight from a planning perspective as to the curb cuts and what is going to come before the Board of Selectmen. That comes way, way down the road. So again, that's something that the Board of Selectmen have never been attuned to and never probably will be because they don't really know zoning and planning as well as they should know, because again, those simple decisions make that's caused a huge problem between TD Bank North and all the way down to Days Gas, because everybody's had that historical use of that.
Yeah, they're all grandfathered into.
Well, there's no such thing as grandfather.
No.
It's town property. I mean, so again, when somebody's used to using town property for 10 years, 15 years, 40 years, 60 years, 70 years, it's really hard to sort of make that big change. So I think it's much more of a political challenge for Champaign. And again, it's always rests with the Board of Selectmen. If they don't have the leadership to basically say this is what needs to be done from a town perspective, it's going to be a very difficult challenge no matter what you do, whatever makes sense from a planning point of view. If the Board of Selectmen don't get behind it and don't agree with it, it's never going to get done.
So we got to sell it to them.
Well, that's the challenge, because most boards don't want to make those tough decisions about what they think is best for the community as a whole. That's the biggest challenge.
Well, that's why we have a town planner, and I think it's.
No, again, you can't put it on the town planner, and you can't put it on the chief enforcement officer. It always has to come with the policy decision makers in the town of Provincetown, because, again, I'm not gonna pat her back here, but she's been politically attacked because of her position, who she is, when she reports to the town manager, who reports to the Board of Selectmen. It stems from the top, and again, I don't want to get to the political.
Well, our whole thing, you missed the first meetings, but our whole idea here,
I
just
was
to
at the first
encapsulate it,
one.
yeah, is that this is a group of activists and that we're gonna try to push our things at a grassroots level and then pull in staff as we need them to help us figure it out and help them be on the team. And then when we have all those homework done and all our ducks in a row, we go to the Board of Selectmen and we say, listen, this is, you know, what we see as being the best thing, and this is,
And it's carefully considered.
yeah, it's carefully considered, and we've done all the legwork for you. It's kind of a no-brainer that, you know, if you're having trouble how to think of this, let's just tell you this is how you should think of it.
Well, I mean, Michelle's been here long as I am, and I think she can give you a lot of historical perspective on that as well.
I think one of the things though, Rick, is that that some historical information is important, but we don't want to get bogged down by the history of. It's important, but not get bogged down by
I'm
it.
just telling
The
you.
new approach that Jen is talking about.
I think that's a great approach. But
Yeah.
again, it's gotta be, however you rise that up to the top, it's gotta be forced on the Board of Selectmen to take action, because they're the ones that are the policy decision makers.
Well, we're here because
Yeah.
there's sort of, you know,
Okay,
there's a
let's-
limit to what they can
let's
do.
move
And Dina?
Thank you.
Had her hand raised.
I just wanted to finish my point.
I had my hand up while you were doing your point so that I could participate. I did not know that other people would just talk. Okay. I'm noticing in this process that we are identifying some things that we may at a later date want to propose for a change in how we run our town. And I'm wondering which committee the idea would go to. But the idea is that I think, I've been going to Board of Selectmen meeting, and I think two things need to change. One is that we need to have people able to talk from the floor after new business, not just before they do the agenda. The second thing is, I think it would be valuable to have the chair of every committee or a substitute at board meetings so that they could be there as resource people. Now, I don't know who to say that to for now, for that is not one of our priorities, but I think we should not be surprised that we uncover things in the town that would make the town run better.
I would agree with that, and I think that the things that you just expressed have been discussed at the staff level recently.
Oh. So do we have a committee that would do that? Would that be outreach and communication? Would that be?
It's actually a separate committee that we had talked about, because it was in the report about how to revamp governance and like move it from the parental model
Yeah,
of
we
them
have
sitting
to
there.
change.
So that is a separate thing, and it's not been included in one of them, so it would be something to do a separate thing, I think.
Back in 1998, we did have a group under Warren Alexander. I don't know if you were the grant writer across the way, but where every chairman of every board got together once every 2 weeks to discuss, this is before Elaine was a Board of Select person. We did it for a very short period of time, but it was, again, it was Milton Ishlis was there, he was the chair of licensing, God rest his soul. It was me, chairman of zoning, it was Gordon Gaskell, but he was alive. I mean, that had been done years ago, but again, it all depends upon
The leadership.
the leadership, if they want that to be part of helping staff and helping, because again, the staff has to work with all these boards.
Right.
And if like, for example, there's always been that problem that the Board of Health doesn't know what licensing is doing, it doesn't know what zoning is doing, it doesn't know what planning is doing, because they're all sort of a step-by-step process. But that did happen 17 years ago, but it sort of got lost.
And it was good when it
I
happened.
thought it was great, but it
Yeah.
just got sort of kaput from the
Okay.
Board of Selectmen.
I think, Rick, some of the problem is that the continuity of these things get interrupted.
Yeah.
So when you have
You read it.
changeover of the boards constantly, and this board especially has no history, and so that creates problems. They probably don't know that ever happened.
Well, anybody who would like to be part of a new committee to look at those kind of things, stay after this meeting. Nagina and I will talk and see if we can make another committee for that. And then we can move on to the next part.
Fair enough. So, is there anything else to add about the Champaign Road group? I thought that the Complete Streets policy was an important thing, and I think it's something that can probably be done fairly quickly. At least presenting it to the Board of Selectmen, whether it actually gets approved, who knows.
Did you guys have a good turnout for the Champaign group?
We actually did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of really good ideas, and we even talked about like the particulars about like painting bike lanes on Champaign Road this spring, really just like setting them off and spray painting bike logos, and also some special like Provincetown 365 logo too, as a way of like designating that it was something that this group did. Robin.
Well, could you talk a little bit about the first idea you brought up about the cycle tracks or getting more permanent bike lanes? Did you guys talk at all about how you envision that actually happening? Like, how would that actually get done?
Oh, that's a more long-term thing. So I think that realistically, we could potentially paint bike lanes on each side this spring. To do a cycle track would involve changing the center line of the road and doing a more major paving job. And I think that when you talk about a cycle track, it's going to have to be, and if a cycle track is the answer as opposed to 2 designated bike lanes in opposite directions on opposite sides of the road, but that would have to be incorporated in an engineered plan for Champaign Road, because ultimately Champaign has to be, redesigned to accommodate, access control in the form of curb cuts, sidewalks, actual curbs and drainage, and that's gonna involve an engineered plan, and then ultimately it'll be millions of dollars to rework that street. So this is very long term.
How about for the painting? What has to happen for that to happen?
We have Eric Larson coming to our next meeting so that we could talk about it, because the initial reaction was, oh no, you need an engineered survey for that. But that's, okay, I know. That's right. That's an engineer's response. I think that realistically what you need to decide is how wide you want your travel lanes, and instead of just painting the typical fog lines, which are the lines on the right-hand side of the road to keep you from, going off the edge. Instead of painting fog lines, maybe narrow the travel lanes, because actually narrower lanes are safer because they cause cars to go slower, and then actually paint off bike lanes. And I don't see the need for a survey when we already have a center line and anyone can hold an 11-foot tape measure and find out where the edge is. So, but we need to convince the DPW of that.
And one thing that did
So that's
come
our
up,
next step.
just as background information on that, was the infamous Green Line project that happened a number of years ago down Commercial Street. We want to avoid anything that looks like a drunken sail bike lane. We want something as sturdy and as permanent looking as possible.
Determining color will be the longest meeting in all of it.
Well, I think too, we were talking just in our group about how many of us ride our bikes out on Champaign, and none of us really do. We all try and avoid it because it's not a great place for biking. And then if we could at least get some of these lanes in, first of all, it would become more apparent to the businesses on Champaign that if there was a safer way of getting out there, they might have a lot more bike traffic.
Especially when you have
And
people with
traffic in
groceries
general.
on the other side of the handlebars.
Yeah.
They need.
So, that's why we're sort of hell-bent on,
Safe.
is there something that we can get done to start some traffic that's safer moving out there on bikes or walking? I mean, during the snow this winter, people couldn't even walk. I mean, there's nowhere to walk. Not that this would make that much better, but it would at least get people used to using that who want to.
Well, and the other thing is that it would be great for us in terms of, I just did what I didn't like happening to me, sorry.
It's the only way to talk.
Yeah, it is that it adds to our logo, to our brand, who we are. I think that is like the first thing, we haven't looked at hearing from the other committees yet, but that is something that's going to be easy
I've got an even better
and
one.
doable. Okay, well, we can do all of them.
It's at the end.
All right.
And I think part of the
That's a
idea
good one.
of having we were talking about having the bicycle track on one side is, then what we're doing in essence is we're limiting the big impact to one side of that street versus both. I mean, both sides will have to change to make it safer, but any solution or any ideas about Champaign, the businesses on Champaign have to be brought along in the process and be part of the process, or it's never going to happen. So.
Anything else to add from the Champaign Road group? Next on the list is zoning, which is super quick. There were 2 people who showed up to that, and we decided to reschedule since it's only 2 people. So that's that for zoning.
Laura, can I just say,
Sure.
the next Champaign Road meeting is coming this coming Monday at 4 o'clock.
I also have a request that it kind of goes with the outreach, but since everyone's fresh and paying attention, and they won't be by then. If everyone who is in part of these groups could make an effort to post your meetings, when your next meeting, either send it to Rob, put it on the 365. I've had a lot of people asking me how to get involved and where they should go. And I want to just direct them to one place and say, here's a list of the meetings and when they're happening and where they're happening, and show up if you want. So if everyone whoever takes charge of their little group, or just someone do it in each group.
Send it
Post
to
your
me,
meetings.
Email it to me
Okay.
so that I can, or put it on the boot so that I can
Shoot
then,
over.
so like,
move.
It's on move.
they're all on move, okay, so I just haven't been saying.
Maybe just email Rob.
Yeah,
That's
email
easier
can
for
help,
you.
yeah, so I'll email, if you email it to me, I'll put on like the next meeting tab.
So can you remind us what your email address is, Rob?
Yeah, it's really long, so it's robert.christopher.anderson@gmail.com.
Robert Christopher.
Robert Christopher Anderson.
Oh, Gloria.
RCA,
Yeah.
like a.
It's, my
like
name's a
TV.
common name, so I had to do the whole thing to get it at gmail.com.
Thank you.
So from the Champagne Road group, Tom, would you like to be the one in charge of emailing Rob since
Sure.
you did the minutes? And they were actually incredible. Actually, I'm gonna pat him on the back a little bit because he turned around those minutes in a matter of hours and he actually like hyperlinked things to them. So he's like, oh, you guys talked about cycle tracks? Here's a hyperlink for that.
Piece of cake.
It's very comprehensive.
Could you go over our website address since I made that
Provincetown365.com.
What is it?
Provincetown365.com.
There's also a link on the main page, right? On Provincetown's page?
Yes, I got that linked up, I thought that'd be part of the last one, but Lynn Martin, they all begrudgingly did it because basically they were worried that if they started putting, community groups, that they'd have to do all the community groups, and I was like, well, we're special, but. But she did put it under, if you go to the right side and it says, I guess it says like, governmental links or what have you, you have to go to see more. But there's a link to Provincetown 365 on the town website. So people can.
Seymour.
No, see?
What's his email address?
It's a big Venus flytrap. So it's we are linked on there, so you can tell people to go to the town website and look for it. Like anything else on the town website, you have to look really hard, but it's there.
Don't call me Shirley.
Add that to governance, please.
Right?
Next up is community housing. I don't know who wants to speak for that. David's not here. He was the one who organized the group. Paul, do you want to?
I'll give a brief, and then Michelle's here and David's here.
And I'm here.
And you're here. We discussed doing something specific. The first thing we were going to do at the next meeting, which is I think Wednesday, was have a charrette with everybody bringing input to the VFW and the Winslow Street parcel. We have a composite plan at 20th scale and 30th scale. We have a sense of how big the existing proposed police station is and what it looks like on the parcel, on the VFW parcel, and we have a sense of what the Board of Selectmen requested a reduction of that square footage. So we have a more of a sense at this point of what the police station might take up as far as the VFW site. We'll also, our composite plan shows the existing road and sewer in and the Winslow Street property, which it starts to identify opportunities and restrictions as to how the two parcels can work together. And then the input from different people who had different expertise, Michelle and David. We will look at, we're trying to start to identify what type, who is the market for this particular parcel. It's not just subsidized housing. This is housing for middle management people, supposedly, but really to identify them, how do you do something that people will want to come and be there? So there are different types of housing. There's attached townhouses, there are single-family houses that are, what is going to be the program for these, that if you go through the process of providing the housing, that it has to be the right type of housing for that income bracket. And these things will start to be flushed out at the charrette on our next meeting.
One of the other things we talked about was potentially showing the site without the police station.
Exactly.
Because it's not a given that it's going there.
I was also concerned when someone said that the police station on that plan was smaller than the one that was finally decided on. Did you talk about that? That the one that she put in the,
That's what he meant.
That's what he meant.
oh, okay.
I was at the last Board of Selectmen meeting, which was just, you were there too, which is just Monday or Tuesday or one of those days. And what they seem to be talking about is mixed income housing. So that, and mixed size housing. So that the house that's there now, that's worth $800,000, which is part of why the property cost 1.7 million, is that there's an $800,000 house on it that's almost finished being built brand new, that has 3 bedrooms, so a family could live there, but to talk about the property as mixed income housing, and that seemed to have a lot of support on the Board of Selectmen, but there was no vote or anything.
And rental.
Elaine was there, and so were you, so you both might want to say something. Pete's.
Oh, just that it's rental, it's not ownership.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
the
rental,
conversation.
sorry.
But it's, when is the charrette potentially happening?
I think it's, isn't it Wednesday?
When is our next meeting? I sent an email out.
Thursday, March 19th.
Thursday.
Thursday.
Thursday in the afternoon, is it?
No, it's in the morning.
Thursday, March
Oh, the morning,
19th
10
at
o'clock.
10 a.m.
Thursday at 10 o'clock.
Pete?
So I'm glad to see that you're thinking about what each income level, might find interesting. I think the other thing to take into consideration, which may be a key consideration, is what you can get in Truro, Wellfleet, and Eastham in those same, at those same price points. I mean, I know somebody, for example, who's renting an entire house for $1,200 or $1,400 a month in Eastham, that actually includes a separate rentable, unit with it. So, I mean, as people are looking at I assume we're targeting everybody who works at Outer Cape, everybody who works here in Town Hall, potentially everybody who works in the police department. It's one thing to say, oh, they're going to Brewster because they can't afford to live here, but if we provide housing here that isn't really appealing in that income range, the convenience of living in Provincetown is going to be all that compelling.
Well, I want to say to that the income, I mean, the income will be an issue, but also part of the issue is being in this extraordinary town. And some people might give up a bedroom or two to be here, where you can stand beside an iceberg on the sand, and it will be taller than you are. Hello. And we got artists galore. I'm just saying, let's not sell ourselves short.
I appreciate that point of view completely, but I actually don't really buy into Provincetown exceptionalism when it comes to housing. So I think we got to be a little bit careful.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask, so just taking a step back, because I wasn't a part of this group, did you guys, when you talked about it, is the idea of this group is that you're focusing on this one parcel and you're moving forward and trying to get this as a solid thing gets done instead of, okay, so it's a real focus on the one parcel.
It's a town owned.
Multiple concepts for it.
The DART team did it's not just about the residences, it's also trying to incorporate some of the, they were talking about the travel lane in and out, the safe passageway, integrating all of that and possibly some green space, some play space.
I'm gonna jump over you because I can. Since the Winslow Street property is already on the town warrant, right, to raise the funds?
Actually, that's what I wanted to talk about, is CPC amended the $1 million request down to 300,000. So if the Board of Selectmen are able to find that additional money, then possibly. But the other challenge you're gonna have is getting it through town meeting.
That's what I was, because the whole thing is, as much as you all talk about it, in your committee and think about the best ways to design the whole thing, April is like a minute away. The town meeting is in, and I know a lot of people are like, are you kidding me? $1.7 million for that wonky piece of property?
Actually,
It's
175.
175.
Yeah. Minus the $800.
So like it's going to be the Elena Hall thing all over again. Is that a lot of people are not going to want to spend that kind of money. And I have to tell you, I'm resistant myself, and I'm all for community housing. And I'm like, are you crazy?
Well, the other thing to consider, not to let the cat out of the bag, because I don't think it's gonna happen, possibly, is the accessory bylaw that's coming down the pike that you guys might wanna tap on Gloria's shoulder about.
I think right now
I don't know if that's coming,
The
but,
accessory, what is that?
It's on the warrant.
accessory bylaw, is it on the warrant? Is it
It is
on the
on the
warrant?
warrant.
I think right now the outreach for this particular thing.
I believe you missed that planning board meeting.
The outreach for Winslow property is now, the time to start be generating support for it. If that's what the committee thinks is the most important thing for that step, then it needs to be, like, the outreach needs to be happening like when we get home tonight kind of thing, to get people behind and why it's important and why that price is justified. Because that's gonna be, you're gonna get a lot of resistance in town hall over that price tag.
I can add a little.
Rick, then Meg, then Elaine.
Can I have to ask one question? Did the DART team decide to reduce the square footage of the police station that was approved by the?
As I understand it, they didn't decide to reduce the size of the police station, but they showed on the VFW parcel a very small portion in the front.
What was the size, you know?
Very small. The size of the parcel?
The only reason why I'm
The size of
asking the
the
question is, we went through a 3-year exhaustive process of taking it down and down and down, and there was a vote of the Board of Selectmen after requesting the building committee to reduce it by over 1,000 square feet, which we did. We brought it down to 13,200 square feet when it was originally over 24,000 square feet at Race Road. So again, from the schematic to sell Winslow Farms, there's all these different pieces. There's $900,000 we took from free cash to buy the VFW site, knowing full well we may or we may not use that as just a community housing or a combination thereof. So if I'm hearing that the DART, through this DART process, that, you know, I saw the schematics showing 60 units on the 0.78 acres behind the police station, plus another 20
It
units
was
at this.
No, it's 41
units
total.
on the VFW and 20 units
61.
No, it's 41 total.
total.
No,
on
no,
the
no.
VFW site, and
No.
then 20 on
I
the
think that's
Winslow.
wrong.
No,
It's
no.
41.
No,
At the
41.
CPC meeting,
40.
they corrected Maureen when she said 61.
Okay.
For both.
No, the CPC, at the CPC meeting, Maureen was corrected and told that was, I think, 41 total.
I think
21 on one, 20 on one side and 21 on the other,
She
for a
was
total of 41.
incorrectly
Yeah.
corrected.
This goes back to the
41 and 20.
Just to go back to my question, the only reason why that sort of threw up a red flag for me was because if you're gonna wanna try to sell this between now and April 4th, you've got the police piece, you've got the VFW piece, and you've got this new 1.75 potential purchase, which I think has to be framed very differently from Elena Hall's parking lot. Because again, I think Tom did a great job on Monday night, basically explaining, you take the 1.75, and again, what is the value of a 3-bedroom home in that
It's
area?
not 800.
Fully finished, at a minimum, it's worth $850,000. So if you take that piece out, you're down to, you're shaking your head, you're a
It is,
realtor, but.
it is.
I am a
again,
realtor, and I can't imagine one person spending $850,000 to live
The whole
on
parcel
Winslow
costs $500.
Street next to the Verizon building, and now the,
Well,
I think that is just
Again,
a
I'm
ratty ass
just
number.
giving my, so again, if you have to sort of look at those 3 pieces. and
How to
again,
frame it.
How to frame it, because again, there's a vote of the Board of Selectmen approving what the building committee did 2 years ago to come to a 13,000 square foot police station. So if that's gonna be made smaller because you wanna add community housing, I do believe
No,
it's.
but
Can
at
I
our,
explain, since,
at our meeting, at our housing meeting, we were told that the Board of Selectmen has now given a square footage, I think, but definitely a price maximum within which they have to work for the police station. And with that in place,
Never
I
happened.
think what we did
It's never
was
happened.
to move and think about what it would be if it was that space that was being talked about, and if it weren't there at all, that there would be 2 charettes or.
Yeah. The police station, though, has been, as you know, it's been a hot topic.
Yeah.
And I think the idea now is that the one thing that has been agreed upon is the square footage, because if it's gonna be even smaller, like what you're saying, there's no point in moving it off of Champaign.
Oh, I agree.
well,
So,
first of all, the selectmen, I think, if I'm accurate, they asked the building committee to look at different facilities in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, that were more in the range of a $7 million budget. And, you know, going from,
That's never happened though, I'm telling you, I'm on the committee. Nobody has asked.
he's the chairman of the building committee.
I'm the vice chair, nobody has asked the building committee to research other police stations at a.
well, I was at the
budget
Board of
of-
Selectmen meeting where they
We said it.
said that the next move is going to be to ask the building committee to look at.
Well, I guess that move hasn't happened yet.
They can ask the building committee to do more work.
One other thing, I looked at the Cataboo's plan for the 13,500 square foot parcel. There are 3 parcels on VFW,
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. The existing building takes up almost 2/3 of that. So if it's going to be on the VFW parcel, then our housing issues are going to be probably, very diminished. So all these things, I think we're going to throw up on Wednesday or Thursday. One of the things that could be a positive thing about Winslow Street is if we can reduce the amount of road area for the 2 parcels and share a road, we may be able to up the density because we have the access out to Winslow. That could be, it could be, these are the kinds of things we're going to be working on site plans at scale, at least having some preliminary ideas.
I need to concentrate on how to sell the purchase, because that's going to get torpedoed. I'm sorry.
Peter, then Meg,
Okay, so, I mean,
and then Maureen.
I'm all for.
Oh, I thought you were still.
Go ahead, Elaine, I'm sorry. No,
Elaine,
please,
sorry,
Elaine.
No, I wanted to say that I was at the meeting the other night with the board when they were going over the warrant and housing issues. And I've asked them, I hope they do it, I've asked them for the town meeting that they have some visuals ready and that they also tell us where the money's coming from to buy this parcel, because it's coming from about 4 or 5 places. And although I don't know that that's set in stone, I think that's what the town is going to need to hear. Where is it coming from, and is it going to be a 2.5 override for the balance or not? So,
Well, the motion would include whatever language
right.
to identify. the
So
sources.
that's being, I hope, fleshed out for us all.
Okay. So let's assume that I love community outreach as much as anyone. So I'm going to go to people and I'm going to hear 2 main objections, right? What's, 1.75 million for that parcel is ridiculous, and as Meg just said, it's a crappy valuation on the $850,000 house. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not a realtor, but I'll defer to your experience. But the second thing that I'm going to be, people I think are going to ask and point out is, we bought the VFW, 2 years ago now, right? I mean, as of this town meeting?
Yes.
We've been through 2 full years, and it's sitting there. And I got up at the special town meeting and said, I think Rick did too, and John did too, I don't remember, but it's like, where's the plan? What are we doing? Where's the plan from the Board of Selectmen? And we're going to be asked to buy Winslow at 1.75 million with no plan. It was actually stunning to me to see that the only plan they had was the dark plan, at the same time that they're talking about defunding the town planner's position. So, it was, that I thought was a little ironic. We can talk about that later. So, so what are we going to say to people when they say, community center, VFW, they're just sitting there, and now there's still no plan, but you want more property. How do we get around that?
That's a perfect conundrum that is the repetitive history of how we run our town and town government and town meeting.
Yep.
It's a repetitive, nonsensical,
I
crazy way.
don't think
So,
Winslow
Rick,
Street
you
is a
should
bad
be-
idea
you
necessarily.
should-
Just,
You should work with Jen and spearhead the formation of the governance group, because we don't have enough subcommittees for the DART.
Yeah.
We could use one more.
But I think that would definitely be a.
With your
yeah.
experience and ideas,
we don't have
I
enough
think
time.
that
So
it-
what are we going to do? What are we going to say between
Can I-
now
Can
and
I,
town
can I,
meeting?
hello?
Yeah.
I have a couple things. One sort of procedural comment, which is the subcommittees are supposed to be doing the work and reporting back, and yes, we're supposed to be having some sort of a dialogue, but, and I want to be careful not to tell you what I think you should be doing as a subcommittee, because I'm not on that one.
But you're welcome to.
And
Go
no,
ahead.
no, I don't want to be on that one, and we all need to sort of not rehash your meeting past and the one coming up, unless, we can go if we want to rehash it, and participate. And I think that what's gonna happen around, I think now I'm telling you what I think you should do.
That's what I was planning, so.
I know. I think that you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket about this Winslow Farms, because I know the people that I've certainly spoken to, and I'm gonna do everything I can to have that voted down at town meeting. And I would hate for you all to be working so hard, and I know how hard these subcommittees are, because I'm on a couple of them. One, don't put all your eggs in one basket, and two, don't listen to what the selectmen say the DART report says. The selectmen don't know anything. They took the DART report. They came up with the 61 units not because they had an independent thought, because it was something easy that they could photocopy. And
Well, and because it's a realistic plan.
And
I mean,
it may
that's
be.
part of this.
It's not realistic because it's gonna cost $1,750,000,
Well,
and
but
they're
if
saying
you
that
read the DART
a
report,
three-family house, a
It says
three-unit.
very clearly, it's focused on the VFW site with 41 units. And it says on the next page, oh, a great opportunity that might come up is to purchase the Winslow Farm, and here's a concept, put an additional 20 units there. But the DART report really clearly separates those two things. They talk about the access differently, they talk about the styles of units that are very
I
different,
appreciate
so-
that the DART report does that, but that's not the conversation that's out, one at the selectmen, or two in town, or three at this housing committee. It's clumped together, and again, I don't think we should be spending all of tonight's time on this. It's a subcommittee thing. I'm saying, you guys have a lot of work to do, and you have a lot of energy. Don't waste it on one project. There's a huge community housing need. We've all decided that, we all know it. You gotta move forward, and if you get shot down on April, you've wasted 2 or 3 meetings of your time
We're not
on one
focusing on that.
project.
It's the VFW site too. I mean,
But it's
that's-
being discussed as one.
No,
Winslow and.
We are going to be looking at it
We're looking at it
as,
both.
as a combination
Okay,
and
yeah,
as
that's great.
separate,
That's
as a
great.
separate.
I think the discussion about
That's- I
Winslow
think-
Farm
I think that's
hijacked
wonderful.
the
I just don't
overall
want you to
discussion.
waste-
I understand.
I don't want you guys to just get shot down.
Yeah, and I want to remind us all that the DART report is something to give us guidance.
Right.
But we are here to own it ourselves, that it fits into our values of the people, the activists who are here to do the work.
Right.
Brandon.
Not to be involved in the group either, but one question that I have is seasonal housing being discussed? And that's it, you don't have to answer yes or no, but I would ask if that's a possibility, since that seems to be a great need here
It was,
as well.
Not yet.
there was a buyer of the community center who wanted to propose seasonal
Well, let's not go
housing.
down that road.
Well,
No,
you have to
no,
go backwards.
that's
No,
why I'm
no, no,
asking.
he asked if they were talking
I'm
about.
asking the committee, I don't
The
need
answer
to,
is
that's
but
if
if
they're
that could
talking
be
about
under
it.
consideration,
It's
because
important.
while my business doesn't need it, I know that it's a great need in town.
I would say that what happened was, we talked about wanting to have something as activists that we could really focus our energy on and move on. And there was what they call low-hanging fruit, and the low-hanging fruit seemed to be these 2 parcels. And I think it's too close to town meeting for us to make a shift, but we did mention that that was one of the things when we decided to focus on these 2 parcels. Is that what your experience was?
Yeah, I think just back in terms of, time that gets spent, because there's really no point at this point for any of us really to be talking about Winslow Street, as it may or may not happen. But I think as activists, if our goal is to go out there and start plugging it and try and get the support for it, that's something where we talk about what's tangible and what we can do that's gonna make a difference. This is one of those things that's gonna make a difference. Talking about how the building's gonna look that may never get built,
Right.
that's really fun.
Always.
It's fun I love to sit here and design how those things might look. But whether or not the town has got the support when you walk in the room, that you got the support to vote in that thing, that's activism.
And I want to add to that activism point, is that people were very concerned about what happened with the free open space and housing thing, and that that item is on the ballot, and that there are a lot of people that will come and vote for, I think, that it should be folded in the short run because of the crisis that's going on around housing. So it's all very.
There's also gonna be a lot of people showing up that are not gonna vote for that.
I know.
I'm just saying that the goal is to, we need to start campaigning for it.
I'm trying
We
to.
need to campaign for it.
We should move
We
on.
should start wrapping this up. But I do want to make one point, which is, I actually find it really valuable that people from other groups chime in. And I think that that's one of the values
Yeah.
of bringing to the larger group what each individual
Right.
group discussed, because it can be very insular when you're sitting there. That's the right word, right?
Yeah.
When you're sitting there in a group and all these ideas are spiraling, sometimes out of control, sometimes not. And I think it's a really good test to bring those ideas to this group, and I think it's really valuable to hear what other people have to say. So I think that this kind of exchange is worthwhile. I wouldn't want this to be just, this is what we did as a group, we're reporting it to you, moving right along.
Can I just say
Thank you for
one
your
thing?
time.
Peter said many of the things that I wanted to say, probably much more eloquently than I would have. But Jen, the thing about going out and trying to support this is, the reason it was shot down at the CPC, the reason the open space was shot down at the Board of Selectmen meeting is the same four-letter word that everybody keeps saying. Where is the plan?
Yeah.
There's not an endless supply of funds. There's not an endless supply of money that we can raise and tax people in this town, or there will be no home ownership in this town because the tax rate will be too high. And we have to figure out what the plan is. And Peter's right, the VFW we purchased years ago. The community center is empty. Where's their plan? And, we're not producing one unit of housing. Buying this property is the easy part of the equation. There aren't developers lined up to spend $14 million, which is a rough estimate, to develop this property for 61 units. We may not get anyone who comes in to develop this property, which is why I think Meg's right. We can't put all of our eggs in one basket, and we have to vigorously pursue things like what the planning board and Gloria are talking about with accessory housing. Those are the things that can provide housing now. These other plans, we're looking at 3 to 8 years, 7 years, 5 years. It's long-term at best.
Any final comments?
I have a question about, sort of has to do with outreach to businesses, and what you just mentioned about getting other people involved and developers involved. In all of these subcommittees and groups, is there any relationship to any economic development people or bankers or developers involved in the conversations? Are those resources that people are taking in to say, is there a proposed developer in the room perhaps that would be interested in working on that, or giving information from the business perspective, since it's going to require money?
So I think the hope was, the dark people, that the Shank Painter and the waterfront were going to end up being economic generators, but I could be wrong.
Just your question, you have a very, very bright, skilled, intelligent man who's could answer many questions that's behind the Grace Goodday building. It just takes a phone call from somebody to say, Mr. Goldman, can you just maybe sit down with us in this meeting, just give us a perspective of what we can and can't. There are many people in this town that are second homeowners, year-rounders, owners and renters that have the expertise that could guide anybody, but again, it's hard to get them to the table because of about riders, but he is probably the smartest guy in Boston that could give you 10 bullet points as to what could work and what couldn't work, probably in a 45-minute time period. So staff is working with him diligently on, is that closed yet, the property?
Yeah.
It's closed. But again, somebody from town hall, whether it be the acting assistant town manager, could give him a call and say, would you be kind enough next time your trip come down to Provincetown to sit down with some DART members and just maybe, that's what you have, when you talk about outreach and selling things, everybody has, and I've been saying this on Facebook for 3 years, everybody has to be a stakeholder. You've got somebody that's really, really bright, that knows his stuff, and he can tell you, this ain't gonna work. I mean, this one right beside me can say, you wanna get a developer in here to spend $14, $15 million to develop that land? They want a 20% return on their investment. It's never gonna happen with community housing or rentals.
I also offered to put the FinCom and anyone in touch with a municipal finance banker. I could do that for this group if you'd like. Nobody ever takes me up on it, but
I'm happy to call Dave.
I hear you.
We're gonna take you up on it.
Dave's
do you want to meet with the municipal finance banker to find out what we can actually borrow?
That can help.
He was excited about it.
That can
He was
help you
excited
finance
about,
it, yeah.
anything 10 million plus, he was happy to talk about financing.
What are you laughing at, Elaine? Everything costs money. I mean,
Well, I'm just saying, money makes the world go round.
You can't build that many units for less than $10 million.
That's right. I'm just excited to hear somebody would like to build something.
They'd
Like
like
to
to
talk
finance
about
it.
Finance it.
Slightly different.
That's a big, huge difference.
We need an old-fashioned barn raising. I'll get out there with our hats and our hammers.
I think that's a great idea. I'm happy to hold David, although we do have to talk about the next meeting date at the end, just because, you know, in case we go into a third night of town meeting.
It could be 4.
It could be 4.
No, because there will be a quorum on the fourth night.
There will be a
Well,
quorum
there's
on
always
the-
that.
All right, next on the agenda
Waterfront.
is waterfront. Is that?
We
We
didn't
didn't
have
have
one.
that one.
That was not.
Oh, you were supposed to wait.
No one showed up.
What? No, we did.
Oh.
We did. Rex didn't show up. That was it.
No, it
Because-
was just Maureen and I and you and,
Ryan?
and Ryan. So we postponed it.
We did postpone.
We didn't reschedule it. It has not been rescheduled, but we did not have it because we thought there were only 3 was too little to actually have a subcommittee meeting.
So we'll have to get back on that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we
because we
cruise
felt
to
like,
parking and transit.
yeah, we really didn't want to do it without Rex because of, yeah.
No, the Harbor Gateway is different. Where
Harbor Gateway is-
McMillan
yeah,
Pier,
yeah,
we've
yeah.
renamed Harbor Gateway.
So the waterfront is more, like in the Dart report, it talks about economic development and
Right.
developing the waterfront for recreation and transportation and commercial uses. And that's the one that we have to reschedule with Rex. And then the next one on the list was listed in the Dart report as McMillan Pier. And as it was said, we renamed it Harbor Gateway because it's actually not on the pier. It's more that little sliver of the MPL that kind of, you know, combines
And the sidewalk.
in town to.
And the
Right.
sidewalk where the sheds are.
Yeah, exactly, onto the pier. So Harbor Gateway.
I like that.
Who wants to talk about that?
I brought the notes, I brought the meeting, the minutes, come on, I can talk about it. So we decided at the meeting that the rough mission of the group is to make a year-round thriving harbor gateway in the area that we know as the McMillan Pier, the McMillan parking lot, and Loeb Square. We decided to rename it the Harbor Gateway because we just didn't want it to be identified with the pier. People were sort of thinking that was a little fishing centric, so the whole idea of it is to sort of create a new center in town that connects what is town to the water. So it's more integrated, both for year-rounders, for renters, and for the tourists who come for a day or a week. The meeting was mostly about brainstorming ideas about the activities that could happen out in that area, and then writing down all the questions we then needed to be answered. So we only had one meeting, so we haven't answered any of those questions yet. So there's still a ton of information we need to gather and people need to pull in. But I can talk a little bit about some of the brainstorms that we had. So we spent a lot of time talking about having a winter festival and market in the quiet season. I guess we don't want to call it off-season anymore, but I call it off-season. Anyway, but so having a sort of German-like, not German in theme, but German in practice. I guess, you know, in Europe there's all these winter markets that happen, or in other places in the United States where
It's like a plaza.
yeah, it's like a plaza. It's more like, or in New York, they have it in
Farmers
Columbus
Market.
Circle. Columbus Circle.
Yeah.
So having,
These pop-up Christmas huts.
yeah, exactly. So having some type of event like that in the winter, where it'd be a food-centric, craft-centric, business-centric type thing, where people knew that it was happening there, and it would drive people there. Some of the other ideas that I guess we've already talked about are the farmers market. We talked about wanting to have an ice rink out there. So obviously it's probably too late to have it happen this year. It's already thawing out there, but yeah. But so we would like to try to have some type of ice rink out in the parking lot next year to sort of.
Even when there's still a parking lot?
I think I think what we need to decide with this group is to figure out how many parking spaces we're trying to sort of take over, right? Is one of the big questions that need to happen.
Once you go to the next meeting, yeah.
Just so you know, the
Try to
next
relocate
meeting, is this Friday the 13th, and we're meeting with both Rex and Dominic the.
When is it?
So Friday the 13th at 9:30 in the morning, we're actually meeting on the pier to start talking about some of these concepts.
So I want to go on record as saying, at the second meeting in a row, it's crucially important that the parking and you guys talk to each other, because if we don't have that down, I'll be among those people, those old people, that fight against losing spaces.
Yeah, no, I
So
think
it's got to work hand in glove.
I think we're very clear on that point. I think so, but before we start,
We're very close.
we're very close. I think the first thing that we're trying to figure out is what activity we're trying to what's reasonable and what activities we're trying to do.
So how many
and-
spaces?
And come up with a plan of
Yeah.
what's doable in year one, what's doable after 5 years.
Okay.
So once we have that number, then we're
Okay.
gonna start talking about it, but we don't know what that number is
Okay,
right
and
now.
I like the way that you used the word PLAN. That's gotta make it all.
That's what I like plans, plans and agendas. So what else? We talked about reaching out to the Center for Coastal Studies and Coast Guard to bring them, figuring out how to bring them down to the pier in a more sort of permanent way. Y'all know there's the idea for the fish market. We talked about having film festival, bringing the film festival or a different film festival out on the pier, or showing some movies in that space, in that public space. Obviously, in the DART report, there was extending the shacks sort of all the way into Loeb Square. And we really want to push that, those shacks as being business incubators. Because, a lot of the businesses that start in those shacks then end up renting, brick and mortar spaces in town. Having an event space out there for party rentals and weddings. We talked about the idea of having mobile food vendors, more fishing classes. We really want, because part of this group is focused on the arts, we do want to make sure like having pushing more music events. So having concerts, having more performers, bringing a real artistic sensibility.
We could have a Provincetown Biennale.
There you go. Yeah. We also talked about having a box office or one central box office on the pier, so that people could sell tickets for any of the theaters or for the shows. It would give the visitors in town one place to sort of figure out what's going on in town and buying, tickets for those things. Talk about having a food festival out there. Now we don't know what it would focus on, whether it be scallops or oysters or chowder or chili like everywhere else.
Kale soup.
Kale soup, there you go. We want to figure out what to do for kids out there. We talked about having public art out there, something crazy and big that would promote the taking of selfies and the posting on social media.
It's at the Fisherman's Memorial. That's actually going to be quite lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I have no idea.
It's beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah, it's at it'll be at the base of the pier,
Okay.
like next to
But
it.
if you do something different, Grace, with the and take out some spaces. But
You put it in a better spot.
I hate the sighting of the Fisherman's Memorial. I always have. I told them that too. But, it's big. It's 14 feet long.
That's actually something
bronze.
y'all should talk about.
If they can find it.
Because that would be a way to start encroaching on the parking.
They're not
Let's start.
close to the.
There's a make of it if you want to see that.
Is that
At
where the-
Burnham Gallery.
Foosball?
Isn't that where the motorcycles?
Oh, I thought you said foosball.
No,
No more
they're
motorcycles.
creating
No motorcycles.
an area that'll be put on, it'll be a new space that the
It's behind the trap sheds, and they're going to carve out a little triangle to put
Okay.
the memorial. It's an awful sight,
Yeah.
but it's a beautiful memorial.
We should,
How do you feel about the
Say it again. It's
Awful.
an awful sight.
well, that'd be something,
I'm
go
on the
talk
art
to them and
commission.
see about
We-
encroaching on the parking lot in that
Can't you do
corner.
something else?
Because we want to encroach there.
Yeah, we start taking it over. That's how
Set
my
precedent.
mama taught me, just start a little closer. And next thing you know, he's gonna move over. And it's all out the whole corner of the road.
So the last idea is having some type of dog washing station or dog-centric station, like either dog washing, dog feeding, or not feeding, but
Except we
water.
can't use any water, it'll be dry shampoo.
So those are all the ideas. We still have a ton of questions to answer. So what does the harbor master think? How many parking spaces do we actually want to ask for? What would the new traffic patterns be? What would be the loss of parking revenue? But then also, what would be the revenue added through new amenities? So we want to know what the current demand for the artist shacks are. Like, is there a wait list for people trying to rent those shacks? And we need to figure out what the plan is, like a 1-year plan, a 2-year plan, and a 5-year plan. So that's it. That's a general.
There's a town on the North Fork of Long Island called Greenport, and they were a fishing village, but that industry was dying off, and the town, I guess there was a realtor in town, I've got his name, that took on this idea of doing opening up some of the land to the water. And they have a carousel that's open year-round, and they have an ice skating, or an ice rink in the wintertime. And it works beautifully, and people come and the kids are all over that carousel. And the carousel is enclosed in the wintertime, and, you know, the music and, but it's a nice, it's another resource of how this little town of Greenport did it. Field trip.
It's a great carousel.
Are you done?
Yeah, that was all. That's it. If I could ask if there's any questions about the idea, then I can talk more about it.
Excellent.
Questions, comments, other ideas? All right, parking and transit, I'm assuming that Jen wants to talk about it?
I have a meeting notes. All right.
Go for it.
Been waiting for this moment all meeting.
Oh, boy.
So basically, we had a really lively and great parking transit meeting. One of the first things that we all noted is there are really no quick fixes with our, you know, the parking situation in Provincetown. If there had been any quick fixes, somebody would have thought of it already. So with that in mind, we had a sort of we veered off in two ways. One thing that I thought would be good for our whole group, and I posted it on the Mood website, is to start thinking of 2020, you know, the celebration, the 400-year celebration. 400.
Yes.
Yeah. What year was 1620? The 400-year celebration for Provincetown, and start thinking of that as kind of a landmark day. We've got all of us in our grand visions for Provincetown have some long-range plans to sort of keep with. And if we could think of 2020 as being a goal, sort of like the Provincetown's planning the Olympics, so that a lot of these things, these changes in the infrastructure, you know, like Champaign zoning, whatever it is y'all are interested in, that's a way to sell it, is that we need to have the town ready to handle capacity crowds and to be able to be more fluid. And things are moving, and there's places for people to go to, you know, use the facilities. We have to be able to handle that. So that should be able to, what does that give us? It's 2015, 5 years to start breaking up plans in terms of that. And then when we go to the Board of Selectmen or whoever we go to, we can say these ideas are part of strengthening the infrastructure. Or,
For 2020.
For 2020, because we want to have 2020, we want to have foresight, you know, full, what is 2020, perfect vision?
Yeah.
We want to have perfect vision.
Perfect.
So anyway, so that's something for us all to think about, 2020. The second thing is is a conceptual shift. Since there is no quick fix for parking and transit issues, I was talking about there being a conceptual shift that can happen now, which has to do with a lot of like sort of public pushing of the idea. For me personally, I think we don't have a parking problem in Provincetown. We have a car problem. So what we need to do is work on shifting the attitudes about cars. That's going to be, you know, multi-dimensional, because one thing you definitely don't want to do when you're selling these ideas is to talk to any local person about any way of taking away any of their parking. You're going to get resistance, and it won't happen. And the conversation will actually stop. You'll get bogged down on where are they going to park when they have to unload their groceries,
Yes.
and you won't get any of the bigger image. You won't get you won't even get to say the word infrastructure, because it's all about the groceries. So the idea is that when you're talking about any of these ideas, is that you make sure that your language is never punitive. It's never about taking something away. It's about enhancing something and creating more, or moving the convenience to another thing to allow more convenience. So part of the strategy I had suggested was to, when shifting the idea of where the parking will happen, it's not so much that we're creating more parking, is that we're changing where the parking hub is. And we will increase parking in these different ideas as well. We will increase parking, but it's not that we're making more parking so we can get even more cars and we can pack more people into Provincetown. The idea is selling this is going to be that when you come to Provincetown, your vacation starts when you park your car somewhere else. So that's the first approach, is we start getting people, we're going to start looking at the Plymouth ferries. My dream for, you know, our parking thing is for Provincetown to buy land in Plymouth and turn it into a parking garage. Where do you park in Provincetown? Plymouth. Go park your car by the Rock. And that's what the Rock is. It's a big parking place. And so we want to look into getting the Plymouth ferry becoming more and more of a viable thing. Because a lot of people who live outside of Boston to want to come to Provincetown, they don't necessarily want to drive into the chaos that is Boston to get to a ferry to come to Provincetown. They're like, oh, we're already closer to town anyway. But we were like, oh yeah, please come, but don't bring your car. So we're looking into different ideas of where are different places on the Cape and in Plymouth or wherever that we can look for parking there, and then sell the idea of transportation to Provincetown. And one idea was a limo liner. They were talking about a bus that's an express bus. It doesn't do the milk route. It doesn't stop in all the other Cape towns. It starts from Hyannis or wherever we decide and comes straight to Provincetown. It's a very comfortable bus. You can drink on it. You can have sandwiches on it. So people that realize that once they park their car, they can forget all their cares. Yeah.
They haven't been ginny.
The cocktail is.
I mean, martini, I'm just like, they're gonna be sitting there, and it could be a little party, there'll be music, and it's like, so that's the whole idea, is the marketing would be like, getting there is half the fun. You know, so that's the shift that has to take place, because we're aiming, there's less cars right now at the people who visit Provincetown. The people who live here need their cars. We're not gonna try to take them on. We need them to start agreeing that we need the people who visit. They don't need cars. So if they don't bring their cars, what do we need? We need better public transportation. We need to create a jitney loop, as the DART report had said, so that wherever we wind up citing these different parking places which are off the waterfront, that there's a way that people can get to their cars regularly, easily, without they can be trashed, drunk, and they're gonna, well, I guess we won't drop them to their cars. You can be drunk as you want, because we're gonna drop you off at your car.
Kill people going the other direction.
Yeah, you'll kill people on the way out of town.
After they've spent money.
Right.
Leave your money here. Right.
Exactly, right, leave your money in your
That
car
one
keys
needs a little
here.
fine tuning.
Right, so you can go sleep in your car, we'll take your keys, you know. But so that's the idea, is to create a sense that, it would also be something to help locals too, if we could create a loop that went, you know, up Shake Painter and down Conwell or whatever, and did it regular enough, and made the, you could get like a day pass or a week pass, you know, for an unlimited, you know, amount of rides, so that people who want to go to the grocery store, you know, like, parking should be kind of thing where like you park your car and you don't move it unless you're going off Cape, you know? We got to change the whole mentality of like, we use our bicycles, you're at the end of Cape Cod.
You drove here today?
I know. I've been known to drive like 20 feet and then back up, down Commercial Street to get back where I was started. That's how lazy I am. So the fact that I'm doing this is completely hypocritical. Because, you know, I would drive to get to the other end of Town Hall. But anyway, so that's the thinking, is that the public transport is something that we have to really work on.
Are you talking about two kinds of public transport?
Yes.
Both the one from Plymouth or wherever?
Yes, two
to
different
here,
kinds.
But also then something in town
Yeah.
for people?
Well, the things, the in-town one would be public transport, and all those other things are gonna be private.
Okay.
Because there's gonna be, the ferry is private, all those things are private. The limo liner will be, you know, private company. But that's the public transport thing, is the jitney loop. It's like a little shuttle. So it's gonna be interesting, because we have to figure out the problem that came up with the taxis, obviously. You know, are not gonna be thrilled about this. Well, you know.
We paid $58,000 for that transportation study 14 years ago. Michelle can attest to that. It's downstairs, hidden somewhere.
Well, then we're gonna
It's
break that out
already
in the
done.
next one.
So again.
It's downstairs?
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's somewhere in this
Transportation
building.
study.
There was a study done to do exactly what you just said.
Oh, really?
Right, Michelle?
I'm so glad we
Yeah.
reinvented the
I was
wheel.
part of that one.
Yeah, you weren't part of it, but it's there.
Well, Jen,
Well,
there's
so then the
also-
other, hold on 2 seconds.
It's been
Let me just
done.
add the last part of my little presentation.
Because that's the activism.
And that's the end of it, yeah. The other part is, so shifting parking, we're increasing parking, but it's mostly about shifting it. So that's about clearing McMillan Pier, because the heart of Provincetown, as the DART report said, should not be parking. Nobody needs to park on the waterfront, except for people lucky enough to live there. So the last thing was, we're talking about actual parking. We're talking about sites. So this is the interesting thing, because anywhere that would be available for parking is also available for affordable housing and also available for open space.
And a
So-
police station.
And, well, not quite, no, because I'm parking cars like, in a police station, I guess. So it's something that's common to all of our interests, is that the finite amount of space can be used for everything. So what happens is, you know, and it happened at the DART meeting, where people were like, oh, we're gonna put this over in this lot. I'm like, no, you're not, because that's where I'm putting the park. You know, that's where I'm, you know, we're all claiming the same places for our different projects. So our ideas were to take the existing sites that we have for parking, which is not a new idea, it's something that, it's been talked online about a lot, about building, going up, building parking garages. Not higher enough to be obtrusive, maybe look into some plans, the way to clad it so it's not so ugly, ugly, ugly. But parking garages there are a couple of different sites that we thought, the Gouveia,
The back lot of
the
Grace
back
Hall.
lot of Grace Hall,
Yeah.
the back lot of Grace Hall. My idea, which is unthreshed, is on across Route 6 where the police station initially they wanted to put it, Race Road. And they nixed that. Well, if it was big enough to put, a megalopolis police station, it's big enough surely to combine like a DPW building and a parking garage. The DPW could be on the bottom and all the parking could be up on the top. So they'd have a place to put all their trucks.
Then we're gonna spend $1 million on site improvements to make that site work for a police station.
Right.
So,
So
no,
it's
but I'm
been-
saying that you're gonna be, I don't wanna,
Bust your balloon.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's-
but we have
that's-
to use the
But
site.
you're also talking about something that's revenue generating.
Yeah, and also the thing is too, is that site is town-owned already, so we don't have to buy it, we don't have to pass a meeting to get, $1.7 million to buy this huge lot, we already own it. And if we come up with a plan that's for the revenue generating, and also it's gonna help the infrastructure with town, and you'll get the, I mean, it's gonna cost money, but.
I think that for the next DART meeting, what would be good to have is a map of available spaces, so that we're not all planning around the same spaces. And that doesn't mean that we will have to make the decision at the next meeting, well, this one will be for this and this one will be for that. But we ought to have some idea of what public spaces are available and who's considering what.
Elaine?
Okay, two things. Number one, parking is revenue generating. So that's going to bring money in if you have a site. And two, the selectmen approved several years ago a people mover around the loop, and I think it was, what's his name, Downey? And we've been waiting ever since for it to be activated. It's been approved.
Who's Downey, is that who's?
No, it was a private person who wanted to run his own business, do the loop.
Oh.
Again, that's the whole buzzword, public-private partnerships,
Yeah.
that's the only way it's gonna work.
Well, that's where I think with our parking transit ambitions, because nobody's gonna wanna spend any money on building a parking garage. They're all gonna claim they wanna keep what we have. So I'll be calling you with your municipal finance person.
The other thing I was wondering, Rick and I were just talking, there's been talk for a long time about, closing one side of Route 6, right? So you only really need one
That's one
lane
of the
in, one
places,
lane out.
yeah, that's one of
It's
the,
a lot of land
that was,
from Conwell to Champaign.
I mean, the least
Yeah.
expensive thing for you to do is, we own that green space in between for our Legion fields that you can park on. And we also have that corner area at the end of Champaign Road. Again, this all ties into a plan.
Right.
that We've never had a plan that, instead of buying and building and retaining and doing all that stuff and spending millions, again, there's some open space land there that you need parking for 10 weeks out of the year.
right.
Again, you have to build something that you really just need for 2.5 months, not for a full year. So again,
Yeah, for instance, that was our first thing that we talked about was basically Route 6. And, ideas for that and what would that mean? It would also mean congestion, it would be pedestrian traffic, it would maybe mean bicycle traffic. If we get a bus coming, where people can bring their bicycles because we want them to ride bikes, then we have to start having bike lanes. We have to start, we're gonna have to look at the traffic patterns of people who are parking their cars out there. How do we get them from there to the center of town where they want to be? And so that's gonna shift a lot of the dynamic of what's out there already, which is sort of nothing.
And that makes me think of, in terms of public-private partnerships, that if we're bringing people into town, that maybe we could have some partnerships with the, and I have no idea what I'm talking about, but the Business Guild, or, and I know that they're probably not our best friends right now because they're paying such high taxes. But I think that this is something that the entrepreneurs who have businesses here might be interested in figuring out ways that there could be a public-private partnership around it, because it means more business for them too.
Yeah.
I think, a future meeting might be interesting also to get Raphael Richter to come and talk. He runs now Cape Cab, Mercedes
Yeah, we
Cab,
had talked about that,
Funk
but-
Bus. It's obviously, it's a private person, but
Yeah.
He has, I mean,
He does have it,
is
yeah.
starting a lot of businesses. He's got that trolley proposed for this summer. I mean,
To
I
tell you the
think,
truth, we had talked about having Raphael come, and I shot it down, because he's self-interested in that department, and I'm not really, I think later when we know more than he does, I'd be happy to talk to him.
but he knows way more than you know
That's what I'm
about
saying,
transportation
I'm gonna
in
learn
town.
more and learn more than he knows, and then I can talk to him. I don't want him telling me.
Well, we
I
also
wanna be
talked
able
about partnering with
I don't
local
trust-
bike shops and doing like a bike share program, so putting a bike share
Exactly. Right,
station
right, right.
down on 6. We talked about getting with the pedicab drivers and maybe having those guys go out there.
Yeah.
So we're still.
We will eventually talk to Raphael.
You know, we
Just not right away.
actually broke up we did another subcommittee of our team where we're reaching out and looking at different things, different options. And we're gonna come back and talk about what might be possible for town.
Yeah, the bike share thing was,
Yeah.
like they're doing in the cities.
Jen, just a couple of things. I know there's a traffic study, and maybe Gloria can speak to this, that's kind of maybe going to happen this year in town. And that, have you heard anything about that? Do you know anything about it, Gloria? It comes up every now and then on one of those televised Board of Selectmen meetings, but I haven't heard anything about whether it's been gone up to bid, or if there's a contractor, or if it's just something that people keep talking about, but there's
We talk about
no
traffic
plan.
counts?
Yeah, traffic study about circulation and counts and all of that, because at the traffic hearing, which was just the other night, they talked about, it was actually the monument came with a plan to reverse the
Right,
direction
yeah.
of High Pole Hill Road to make it come, so people would kind of go up off of Bradford Street. And anyway, it turned into this, well, obviously we need to talk about it in a much broader scope, because we can't just reverse the direction of one road, because it affects a whole bunch of other roads
Exactly.
and things like that. So there was this talk about, well, there's a traffic study coming, but
Who would know about the old transportation study, and who would be the town hall point person?
I can find out about the old transfer.
I think it's on the website, actually.
Is
Ours?
it?
I think it is.
Or the town.
The town's old.
Okay. We need to get it on our.
so there was that idea about where's the traffic study, is
I
it in
think that was
process,
like
or?
a general discussion, like, wow, it would be great to have a traffic
Because
study.
I know the bicycle committee would love to have real counts of volumes on Champaign Road, on Commercial Street, at a whole bunch of specific locations, and get actual counters out there so that we actually have information about pedestrian volumes and.
We have
all
that,
the time.
we
All
have
the
that
time.
counts, not on Champaign, I know we have it on Route 6, and we have it at key intersections on 6, so we have it at Conwell and 6, and we have it at Champaign and 6.
But I think they've also had them on
On
like,
Commercial Street.
or
I
like
don't think
Bradford or something.
I've seen them in different spots, but
Yeah, so who
I'm
has that?
not sure how the county does it, but I'm not sure who.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be
If we
something
have
for
any
us to
say
look
in
into.
So anyway, so that would be
Is to
helpful.
round up that information.
And my other thing was something that came to mind, there was some Facebook thread, and people were talking about, well, if we change parking, yada, 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 where do my visitors who come in the summer
Right.
park when they get to town? And one of my thoughts was, because they were talking about, well, people are gonna have to park off in this remote lot, how do they get to the inn, right? My thought was valet parking. Seems like a great entrepreneurial opportunity, but again, you need somewhere to park those cars, so that people could actually be valet.
And that's also one of those
Take those
things-
cars.
Yeah, that's I'll write that
Great
down.
idea.
That's a great idea, and I think
Particularly in
also,
summertime.
like, part of the campaign of changing the public sense of, it's sort of like, we used to be really conscious about water in Provincetown. It used to be that every restaurant knew that you don't give water to anyone unless they ask, and you just don't. And one of the problems that's happened with all the new people that have moved to Provincetown is they want all the nice things that they get in Boston and wherever, and now water comes on the table. I'm mortified. Every time I go to a restaurant, I'm given water automatically. I'm like,
I think more water is used when you flush the toilet. Honestly, a glass of water.
yeah, but it's mentality.
But it's
a
more than
mentality.
that glass,
And it
it's
gets
washing the glass and everything
And
else.
it's throwing the water away.
Yeah.
It's like when I'm as a waitress, people always ask for water when it's a hot summer day. That's fine. But as a waitress, I clear away more glasses of empty water, and it takes to wash it. And it's a mentality, because the thing is, you can't trust people to draw the line of like, oh well, in California they have a water issue, and they have if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. We don't do any of that because we're all really spoiled. And we all really we don't realize that it's such a precarious strip of land that we're living on. So to me, the idea is that, where do my guests come? Where do I park their cars? They shouldn't be bringing their cars. Where do your guests bring car? Don't tell them not to bring their
Well,
car.
that's the other thing that we talked about at the meeting.
If you don't have a
is
place to park it, why would they bring their car if there's
tapping
nowhere to park?
into more ecotourism and tapping Tony on the shoulder to do, I think Jen came up with it,
Love that
step out of your car, step into nature,
Yeah.
something
Yeah,
like that. So
exactly, yeah, we were talking about
possibly
the visitor service
working,
boards.
yes, working with
Much
Tony
better.
to do more marketing campaigns of,
Yeah, about
enjoy
walking
the-
around.
the
Put down your
ecotourism
cell
that we-
phone,
Yeah.
put down your cell phone, put down your car keys. Welcome to the dunes. You know, you came here,
You at
you
least
came
got
here,
electricity and running water, that
Yeah.
would be it.
you came here for what the natural, what we have to offer, and what we don't have to offer is a parking place.
Give you a shot.
We have a lot else besides parking.
And Tony has a big budget, so.
Oh, I heard that,
would say
though,
big
Maybe not a
budget,
big, but,
I would say that he was very generous with his budget for the DART outreach before the initial meeting, so.
So that's it for
People feel
parking.
like
The
it's
fireworks and the lighting.
Thank you, Jen.
And our next meeting is March
17.
March 17th at 4 o'clock.
Are you gonna do the outreach? Okay. Can you leave my great idea?
March 17th.
Jen.
No, even before, I'm gonna
I want everybody to know.
You're welcome.
You can make some snowman in November.
I know.
Yeah. I built one, I practically killed myself building it, and now it's all just a bottom. Yeah, it's good, yeah.
Okay, we're not adjourned yet.
Yeah,
All
okay,
right.
so.
Final worker topic is outreach, and Rob is gonna talk about that.
Okay, so we had a great meeting, there was 8 of us there. We decided, so we're not thinking about the outreach group as a group in and of itself, it's just a service-oriented group to help all the other groups, period. So it's sort of a, yeah, it's an umbrella group to help all the groups. So we came up with sort of 5 action items for this group to take on. So the first is crafting a message and creating a brand, which includes creating a logo, which is underway. Do you want to talk about it a little bit? I mean, not present it, but just, well,
Yeah,
say something
at
about it.
our first meeting, we talked about it would be important to create a logo so that we could have a brand identity for Provincetown 365. It kind of gets it away from being a DART thing to being Provincetown 365, so the presence. Rick and I met and have been working on a draft of a logo and also a collateral package for anything that might be needed for town meetings or for going forward. It's in the process now. I think we want to get together as an outreach / PR / communication group first, kind of hash through that logo and package, and then bring it to this group. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Did you have any more movement on the white line woodcut idea? Is that part of it?
I think one of the things we're going to do is we're letting them do their work and sort of coming up with a plan, and then they'll present it to us, and then we can.
And then we'll go afterwards and say, take it all away and make it a white line woodcut?
Maybe. We'll see.
I think maybe beforehand you should look into the white line woodcut, so I don't have to like,
Yeah.
Keep saying it.
Well,
yeah, so I don't have to keep saying it.
well, you don't have to.
2016 is the anniversary of the first Provincetown printer show.
I have a feeling, and I'm just gonna say this here because at the meeting, no offense to anybody who's at the meeting, I don't know if you all understand that Provincetown is the home, it's the birthplace of the white line woodcut. If you don't know what that is, go and Google it. It's a really significant thing to our history. It's a really important art form. It's singular to Provincetown. It's the reason we have a historic district, is because they tore down Blanche Lazelle's studio. She was a famous white line woodcut printer, woodblock printer. And they did a museum, they show in the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, celebrating this person. And they bring all these wealthy people from Boston who are donors to the museum to take a tour and see Blanche Lazelle's studio where she made these lovely woodcuts. And lo and behold, it had been demolished. It created a furor in Provincetown, a furor that ultimately landed in the Historic District Commission because her studio was the final breaking point when they destroyed that studio. So I suggested that because all this thing about branding that you all talk about, stakeholders and branding, the local people in Provincetown think that that sounds corporate and that that's not what Provincetown's about. You turn people off when you say the word branding. I don't want Provincetown to be branded. I don't even like that our group is being branded. But if you made it in a white line woodcut, I would say at least you have respect for the traditions of Provincetown.
And it would be picked up. Can I just add to that?
Just, that's my last pitch for the White Line.
How about we see what the draft is? We
Yeah.
don't know if it is.
Yeah.
Let them take a look at it.
Creatively,
We can
I
talk
think
about
we
it.
received a lot of input from a
And
lot of people.
There's gonna be a white line woodcut demonstration at the Year Rounders Festival by Grace Ryder O'Malley on Saturday.
There you go.
And the lovely local museum.
Rob, I just want to add to
Award winning.
the logo and branding that we may have to figure out a different name so that more people will come and support us and whatnot. But I was at a school board meeting last night, and they've decided, thank the good Lord, to change or to work on changing, improving their website. And they're going to start with a logo, and the one that they're going to use is the one that sometimes you see on the floor at the public schools, and that's the fisherman in the circle. It's an old, so I'm saying that just to say that people are moving to logos and brands, although they may not be saying those words, but they also are paying attention to what is the culture of this town. And so they're going with a picture of a fisherman with his fisherman hat on and everything out in the ocean trying to find fish. So I think that that's what she's trying to say. I don't think it has to be a woodcut.
I got it.
But
In the
I think
group, we had
it does have to
Ally,
be like that.
Eileen, and Rick.
That's
who
exactly
are
my point, is it does
Ally,
have to
Eileen,
be
and Rick
like
are working together on a logo. They will have multiple options at the next outreach meeting, and there'll be further discussion that everyone can participate in at our April meeting. I think we can move on.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of creating a message and crafting a brand, I think, so one of the other things we're gonna do is we wanna give this group language so we can all more clearly talk about what we do and who we are. So we're working on that, that's something we wanna do, so that we're sort of all in the same message about what we're doing. And then we also want to give you guys, or get everybody sort of in the same vein, language to like post about on social media, so that we don't have one, in terms of social media, we don't want to have one voice on social media where like one person's posting in the voice of the group. We want everybody to be talking about
Right.
stuff.
So in light of that, can I request that instead of saying DART meeting, that we start saying P365 with the parentheses around DART?
I already have
Yes.
a change
Oh,
for
good.
the next,
Okay.
the next
So-
agenda, yes.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
So
Because
that's,
people can get into 365.
Yep.
yeah, I agree. So that's the first thing. So that's creating a message, creating a brand. The second thing we want to do is public relations. So that's more sort of like traditional public relations stuff. So that's reaching out to news media. We talked about who that would be, how we would do that. We're sort of starting that process. We want to keep the public updated about what we're doing. So that's going to be through the website, through social media. And then we also talked about the idea of creating our own stories online. So either through video or through text, like highlighting people or projects that sort of put a human face on what's going on. I don't know, I don't mean this to be referential, but like there was a video that was put online about my partner and I making the canteen this week, and 8,000 people looked at it. You know,
Yeah.
so like there was just it was putting a human face on economic development and the town and like I don't know, and Lexus. It was a commercial for Lexus. But I think we want to talk we want to create stories like that because it sort of gives a better picture. Of
So do you think the stories are about the culture of who we are, Provincetown, or is it about DART members, or is it about, because I think that that's an important thing to be clear about, because I've noticed in the banner that every week for the last month maybe, there's been one thing, a full page about one person. I think that's all good. I think telling our stories, but it has to be, of course, the wide diversity of Provincetown stories, and I'm not talking about color or anything like that, or even gender, or sexual orientation, or whatever. I'm talking about everything, so that we have the old, we have the young, we have the brown, we have the Spanish-speaking, we have the people who are second homeowners, we have the businesses, we have everything. I love the idea of telling our story.
We didn't really talk about it, I'll say that. It wasn't something that we really delved into, but at least in my mind, how we would do it is we would take like our working groups and we would figure out a face that goes with those working groups. So like for the waterfront, we would talk to fishermen, we make a story about a fisherman about how, we talk about Provincetown fishing and highlight one of those fishermen and how this group is helping him do whatever, or something like that, I don't know, you know. Or we talk about Shank Painter and, you know,
yeah.
it would just be putting a human story
Yeah.
to, yeah.
But just remember that part of that goal is outreach, and that we're trying to reach as many people out there that are Provincetown
Yes.
as possible, so that our choice of what we're trying to get across would be what we're doing in this area, but our choice of who to pick to do that ought to be sure that we're reaching out to different parts of Provincetown.
Yeah, that makes sense. The third, so that was, the first thing was crafting a message, second was public relations, third is community outreach. So we talked about facilitating ongoing conversations in real life with people. So not just online, not just at meetings, but figuring out how to host. We don't want to have like, maybe like official coffees, that we don't want to like have an open house, but having sort of stealth coffees, basically, where we host an event, invite people, and like talk about stuff in sort of a living room type setting, or meetings with people to just spread the word and get people who, sort of like Rick was saying over and over again, we need to be talking to people, stakeholders and decision makers, to make sure that they're on the same page with us.
Right.
And,
I've been posting stuff online, and everywhere I go, someone stops and asks me about this group.
Exactly. And at the
Everywhere I
Board
go.
of Selectmen meeting, somebody said, with sort of a sneer at one point, "Are you from Dart?" So it's clear that already people know more about us than they did before, but we have to get out there who we are, what we're doing, and blah, blah, blah. We have to get
Actually
moving on
do
it.
something.
yeah.
We have to get
Be
moving
good.
on it.
So on that note, number 4 is tactical urbanism. So tactical urbanism is stuff that we can, short-term stuff we can do to make the town better, but also sort of make a name for ourselves. We,
I had this awesome idea about everybody going out and building snowmen. And I did it in my house, it was a nightmare. I thought everybody should build snowmen and make a sign, and I had the sign and everything, that said, "Not everybody leaves Provincetown in the winter." And they hold it, and then at the bottom it would say, Provincetown365.com.
Did anybody else do it?
No, because what I was gonna do is build a snowman and take a picture of it and send it out and say, "Come on, everybody, let's do this." The snow is so dry.
It was.
I was out there with a watering bucket in my yard. I thought my husband was gonna help me build it, and he totally didn't. And I was like watering the snow. I was like, this is ridiculous. It took like 6 hours. I did build the snowman. Tried to put the eyes and stuff on. They blew out in an hour. I got sad. And then it snowed again the next day, and I was like. So anyway, and now it's warm out, so I don't know that it would
Great
stay.
idea.
Next year, this is it. We're gonna build this. If everybody built one, that would really get it all around, because that would be fun too.
so the snowman didn't work, but we had a better idea, even better than that.
Well, they were talking originally about that. I came up with another idea. Full of it. We were talking about trying to make an impression, doing something positive for the town, and they were talking about painting the bike lanes. And then I realized one of the greatest things that every single person in Provincetown could get behind would be restoring the pictures of the
Yes.
Portuguese women on the pier.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's an installation called "They Also Face the Sea."
Oh my God.
It's about the Portuguese matriarchs of Provincetown. They've fallen into disrepair. They mean a lot to a lot of people. They mean different things to different
What's
people.
the process of repairing them?
Well, basically, we wouldn't, because they're photographic reproductions, we wouldn't necessarily need to repair the screens, but get them reprinted. And the good news is that it was done like 9 or 10 years ago, so the printing processes are a lot more affordable now than they were then. I met with Ava Nogic. We talked for a long time about it. It was her idea to put them up there. The photographs are by Norma Holt. The title to them is owned by the Pilgrim Monument. So I just have to call them and make sure to get their permission to reproduce them again, to revisit the installation. And then I called Vaughn Cabral, and he was very excited to do it. He had to talk to his sister. I'm sure she'll be excited too. He started to hesitate because about the money, and I said, don't worry, we're not asking you for money. We just want to know that you are committed to seeing these restored on your building. And he said,
Desiree was on
absolutely.
Facebook desperately looking for people to help with them about 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So-
Desiree was?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, she's kind of out of the scene, well,
She's in Kentucky.
they're my cousins, so I know a little bit about how crazy.
You're on camera.
Yeah. No, I know about like crazy family relations and, who needs to do what. So, Candy apparently was the one that John had talked to about it. And then the last part about that is Vaughn told me that he has, there's a file cabinet somewhere that has all the information about where it was printed. They're held on by grommets. It's basically, it's a screen. It's a, like a wide mesh screen, and they're held on by grommets. So the good thing is that all the infrastructure is still there. So it would just be reprinting the screens.
And there's one missing now, right?
There's one that's completely down now.
But we can put that one back up.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say, my family on my mother's side is Portuguese, and those faces and those women are people that are in all of our families. And they were the women who had to sort of set up families and communities in places that were dependent upon the fishing part of it. So it was variable, it was hard, kale soup came from there, it was making a way out of nothing. And those women are the silent, I have goosebumps, they are the silent anchors of the families that was here before any of us were here, or not all of us, but most of us were here. And I can't think of a better way to say to the old Fisher Portuguese Catholic community that we know where this place, this ground that we own part of comes from, and we honor it. I think that is a fabulous idea.
Yay.
You got me.
Yay! So then our first task then is going to be fundraising. And I know that this is where the corporate types that I'm always putting down, this is where you'll come in real handy, and I'll start liking you. I'll start liking you a lot more.
Hold on, what is the cost?
I don't know the cost yet because I'm waiting for Vaughn to get back to me with his information about where it was printed before. It doesn't mean that's where we necessarily get it printed again, but I'd have to get it and then get some photography people and a sense of who would do that, and then I'll hopefully at the next DART meeting I will come back with estimates.
Well, what I would like to do, if it's possible, is to get those refreshed and up as the season is starting.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would like for us to maybe start talking among our friends about fundraising. Do you have even a rough idea? Was it $200 per picture?
I have no idea.
Was
The
it
people I spoke
$10 per
with,
picture? Was it $1,000 per picture?
the Fine Arts Work Center kept tabs. Norma, she did her fundraising, and Fine Arts Work Center kept the tabs of it. And I went to the Fine Arts Work Center and put in a request for someone to look through their deep storage, because it's all off-site.
Hunter,
Ohanian?
Yeah, he was, Maureen just remembered.
Somebody asked us about getting those, raising money and, how they got printed, and I think
Somebody told us it was Hunter, who knew and would have that information.
So can you put
I'll get
what you get, instead of waiting to the next meeting, if you know it before that, let's get it on our internet site so that we can start with ideas about how we're gonna move forward.
I'll definitely, as soon as I know, I'll get it out there. It's just been, I've made it like 3 inquiries now, and everyone's like, gee, I don't know who printed that.
Yeah.
But they also had, Ava doesn't know, it's a long story. Ava was wonderful. She said that basically, those are our mothers. And she goes, you come into the town and you see them and you think, yeah, it was a wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
She said, you come into town and how can you be bad when you see that your mother, your mothers are watching.
Some people clearly aren't looking at them.
I know, clearly, yeah. Well, they're doing it under the pictures. But anyway, so.
It might be obvious too, but the way to think about it is, if you think about it, this project sort of encapsulates almost literally every single thing that we're trying to do in this group. It's artistic focused, it's on the water, it's transportation. People see it when they come into town on the ferry. It's just almost touches every single thing.
It's brilliant!
Yeah, it's brilliant.
It is.
So yeah. And that sort of leads to the 5th thing that the communications group is going to take on. Yeah, no, just fundraising. So we're going to take that on as an official part of the group that will be the ones who sort of
if you all agree,
yeah, just to spearhead not just fundraising for this project, but it'll be the mechanism by which we start planning events and start planning fundraising events or fundraising efforts.
And that might be a cousin or overlap with the person-to-person outreach.
Yeah.
In other words, there's similar kinds of connections there.
Yeah. The only thing I didn't add was, so by the time town meeting rolls around, we do hope to have the logo, and we're gonna be printing a pamphlet. And I guess we're not gonna meet before that meeting, so we will have, it'll be the outreach group will come up with a piece of, it's not a pamphlet, sorry, it's a
Flyer.
flyer. Yeah, I was saying a brochure, but.
Does our Avalar have to see it
Yeah, by the
before March
26th.
26th?
Yeah, so we don't have a lot of time for that.
Okay,
So there'll be some,
Karen Jo.
there'll be some literature that we'll be handing out at town meeting. And we also need to meet to talk about what our presence at town meeting will be. So that's something we need to decide about what's gonna happen. So if we're gonna be standing outside or all wearing purple or whatever, we wanna have some type of presence so that.
Yeah.
Actually, do we have to get approved? We have to get that approved to put it on the
Yes.
table?
By the 26th.
So who here is chummy with her?
Oh, he's gonna do it, I think, or he's
Are you
gonna
gonna
give
do
it to
it?
somebody to do
I'm not chummy with her.
We'll figure it
I was
out.
gonna make the flyer, but I don't know who should.
It has to be done by the
Well, it
26th.
doesn't need to be approved by her. I mean, it needs to.
does.
Yes, it does.
Well, it needs to
Yeah,
be
it
shown
does.
to her, but she's not
And
gonna vet
she's-
or she's gonna vet her.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
gonna vet everything.
Every
She sent an email out
PowerPoint
that
slide
said,
Yeah, I
that
saw
I've
that.
ever done.
So whoever approaches her, she took part in that, you know, she came and was in the work groups.
Oh, yeah.
So she was a part of it.
so I want to add one thing just for you to know, and that is that the school committee gave a report to the Board of Selectmen that was, and the Finance Committee, I think they met together, and it seemed to be pretty much acceptable. But one of the things that the school board said that it was one of its major priorities was housing. Before they did the whole rest of their report, they said housing was, so there's going to be a way that education and housing is going to start, I think, talking to each other.
So is that it?
Do you have another date for that? And did you guys meet while I was on vacation? Okay. So when's the date of the next
The
meeting?
town stopped living when you were on
So we
vacation.
should
We don't do it.
do that
Just
soon.
like
Yeah, okay. All right, so the last agenda item is next regularly scheduled meeting date of April 8th should be changed because of the potential third night of town meeting.
Right, and we'll be exhausted anyway.
So let's think, it could be either the next week or 2 weeks after, although I have to say when we rescheduled that one meeting because of the blizzard 2 weeks
Everything
later,
off.
and then I had another DART meeting the very next week, it was hard
It was
to
hard.
pull together a couple agendas and a lot of people couldn't.
What about just oh no, Tuesday's not gonna work, right?
What's the problem?
So,
Might be Monday,
maybe just a week later,
Yes.
so the April 15th, is that?
I think it's the 8th.
Tax
So
day?
I have a
Yeah, it's
I
tax
have
day.
an HTC meeting, which will be in this room, so maybe make it an hour later.
6:30?
6:30?
Victor's opening parties.
That's hard.
Better for me.
Is that a Wednesday?
So Wednesday, the 18th,
The 15th, sorry, April 15th.
oh, I'm looking at March,
Tax
sorry.
day.
How about Tuesday the 14th,
Or I was thinking Monday the 13th.
or Monday the 13th? What if
Monday
we
the
just change
13th?
a different day?
Mondays are usually like select board meetings
Right.
potentially, so I would say Tuesday, the 14th, we have a better chance of getting this room.
Yeah, I won't be able to come on Tuesday.
Or Wednesday, the 15th, but like I said, an hour later would probably work best.
Right?
Do we land on a date?
I've written 3 down
I know, that's
I've
right.
already crossed it and there's.
Wednesday?
So just have the
So at
15th.
least it's the same day of the week?
Yeah.
Does that work for most people here? Wednesday, the 15th at 6:30.
It's 6:30.
And you'll post that on the.
Is the 15th, right?
Yes.
Well, I guess the other thing too, I'd like not to be too much of a therapist, but this is our first meeting, like our first meeting after the working group meeting, so we really don't know what this meeting
It's gonna be.
right? So just keep that in mind. If you guys have ideas about what should actually be happening in these meetings, or what went well or didn't go well, or what we should add to the next one, obviously, there should be somebody assigned from every group to report back to this meeting next time. So when you go to our working groups, pick somebody, whether it's the communications person or someone else, to have something prepared. And obviously, the more we have prepared, the better it's gonna be for these meetings. So whether it's having maps ready or a slideshow or something, not to put too much work on everybody, but the more prepared we are for these meetings, the better they'll be and the faster they'll be. I don't know, if you have any ideas, you can talk to me about it, I guess, and we can all start talking about it.
I was actually gonna ask if every group is represented well, because zoning only has, I think, 2 people.
About 6 people signed up, I don't understand.
I think so.
But
And
it's a good
ironically,
question.
the waterfront group, which didn't meet, has the most number of people. And I'm wondering if that's the reason it was hard, like picking a time and date, because there are so many people and it's.
There were
It's
a
a
lot of people
conversation.
that didn't respond to the
Rex's
emails,
email.
no, not Rex's, but just in general, you know, Cory and I started out with signing up for 4 different subcommittees, just because we wanted to sort of see which ones were gonna work for us. And just, we each had one group that we were trying to organize. It was really hard to get people to respond, and that could very well have been just the time of year. So I think it's, you know, I think we just try it again that way, which is cumbersome until
I
the
had
first
wanted to
meeting.
be on one of the, I missed the meeting where everybody decided those things.
Signed up.
And so,
No, you did.
Yes, you
yeah,
did.
I wasn't here for that.
Well, whatever.
No, that was the meeting before that we did that.
She's in New York that week.
So, yeah, so I was interested and I didn't know when the people were meeting. So I had already missed, by the time I realized you were meeting, I had missed the meeting.
Right.
So, that's another thing is that if we can put the meetings, as I said, on the website, that way people can come, like I could come
Right.
without
You
having.
put, yeah, because you put up on Moot, you know, when's the waterfront meeting?
Yeah, exactly.
And nobody responded because there wasn't another.
There wasn't
person.
one, yeah. But also, every time the few times I go on Moot, it's just you. It's just the 2 of us. I'm like, hey Rob, what's up?
Yeah, but that's okay, if it doesn't
So
work,
but now-
if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
But now they're gonna be on the Provincetown 365 website because each group is gonna email Rob with the,
Right.
dates.
Yeah, so I think the waterfront should just try again. They should
Yeah.
just
I
try
think
again.
it's fine.
Well, and can I ask, because being on parking has taken up a lot of time and we're starting to get into season, is there a way to opt out? I signed up for a bunch of them.
You can't opt out? Where
No,
are we gonna meet?
not of ours.
Oh.
I'm talking about other ones I didn't
Yeah,
have
just
time.
send
to-
us an email back and say.
Just don't
you take
go.
me off.
Just
Okay.
don't go.
No.
I think my absence speaks volumes.
You and me. Yeah.
But I think that's a good point though too, that this is good, like,
Did I show up?
we have to have no judgment about not missing meetings, you know, like, we're all gonna get busy when it comes up, and like, if things peter out, it's gonna happen.
Can you tell us how to get on the bus? You just go to the.
Yeah, it's-
Thank you, everybody.
I'll put it on.
Good job.
Do you have to get an app for it?
Are you guys
No, it's just